Since April 12th, 1945, dear Mother, I don't know if this letter will ever reach you, but I need to write it. I need to get the weight off my chest. Things are not like we were told. The war is crumbling around us, and so are the lies they fed us for years. I am no longer the proud soldier I once was when I left Berlin. I am just a tired man, desperate to survive, like the rest of the boys around me. We're somewhere outside Leipzig now, in what's left of a shattered village. The American tanks rolled in 3 days ago, and I've never seen anything like it. Not just the firepower, but the way the villagers welcomed them, some even smiling. Smiling, Mama. After years of bombs, death, hunger, and fear, people were smiling at the enemy. That shook me. 2 nights ago, my closest friend, Franz, broke down crying in his bunker. He's been in this war longer than me, and I've seen him shoot, stab, and survive like an animal. But he told me, through broken sobs, that if the Russians reach us first, he'd rather shoot himself than be captured. He's not the only one thinking that. You see, the stories coming from the East are worse than nightmares. Everyone is terrified of the Red Army. Word is spreading like wildfire that the Soviets are brutal. No mercy, no rules, no survival. People say they burn towns, shoot civilians, and torture soldiers. I don't know what's true anymore, but I do know what fear looks like, and it's all over the faces of the men around me. Yesterday, a unit commander ordered us to move toward the eastern forest line and prepare for defense, but half of our men disappeared overnight. They weren't deserting to run away. They were trying to reach American lines, to surrender. Yes, surrender, Mama. They say the Americans give food, that they don't beat the prisoners, that they allow Red Cross visits. Some even believe they might let us go once the war ends. It's madness, really. When just last year, surrendering was the ultimate shame. Now, it feels like hope. There's a boy in our unit. He's just 17. He whispered to me that his older brother was captured by the Americans last month and is alive. He somehow sent word through a French local. He's not starving. He's safe. That's all we needed to hear. We've stopped seeing Americans as the enemy. They are the gatekeepers to a chance at survival. I never thought I'd say this, but when we hear the roar of their tanks now, we don't hide. We breathe easier. Some even smile. I don't know what will happen to us, or what history will say about this time. But I want you to know this. I'm not a coward. I didn't join this war to surrender, but I didn't join it to die for nothing either. I want to come home, Mama. I want to feel the sun on my face and know I'll wake up tomorrow without gunfire in my ears. If I find a way to cross over and raise my hands to the Americans, I'll take it. I have to pray for me. Pray for Franz, too. Your son, Otto. The sun had barely risen when the sound of boots crunching gravel echoed across the camp. Our squad was supposed to be on high alert, but no one even lifted their rifles. We were hollow men by now, sleeping with our eyes open, eating what little rats hadn't already chewed through. The war wasn't just ending. It was collapsing, and it was dragging our sanity down with it. I sat by a rusted barrel, watching Franz fidget with his helmet straps like a madman. His eyes darted toward the tree line every few seconds. Then finally he whispered, "Tonight, I'm going." I didn't need to ask where. We both knew American lines were less than 15 kilometers west of us. Between here and there was mostly farmland, open fields, and a few bombed-out cottages. But the real danger wasn't American patrols. It was our own people, SS units. They were still hunting deserters, still clinging to Hitler's fantasy, even when Berlin was burning. Some of those bastards would hang their own mothers for cowardice. Franz leaned closer, speaking low. "There's a dairy farmer just north of the river. He's helping soldiers get through. Says the Americans don't shoot if your hands are up. We have to try." I stared at him, unsure. I had spent 5 years fighting for this uniform, for this country. But the country I thought I was fighting for, the proud, clean, noble Germany they promised us in speeches and propaganda, was dead, buried beneath the rubble of its own cruelty. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound, every owl, every branch cracking under wind felt like a gunshot. When Franz tapped my shoulder, moonlight spilled through a broken roof beam. His face was pale. His hands trembled, but his eyes held something I hadn't seen in months. Purpose. We left quietly, avoiding the watchposts. It wasn't hard. Most of the guards were either drunk or pretending not to see. They knew. They all knew. No one wanted to be the last idiot to die for a dead Führer. The road was soft under our boots. Rain had fallen earlier, and it soaked through our socks, but we didn't care. The idea of capture, of safety, was like adrenaline in our veins. We moved fast, sticking to the ditches, ducking whenever distant engines hummed. Then we saw the farmhouse. It stood crookedly against the horizon, smoke curling from its chimney. A dog barked once, then fell silent. A single lantern burned inside. Franz led the way, knocked softly, and an old man with a pipe in his mouth opened the door like he was expecting us. "You're not the first," he said, "not even asking our names. You won't be the last either. Americans patrol here at dawn. Cross the pasture. Drop everything but your coat. Hands up! Walk slow!" We nodded. He handed us 2 old bread rolls and a flask. "Tell the Americans I fed you if they ask. They're kinder when you tell them someone helped you." We barely made it 50 paces from his house when the flares lit the sky. Red and white streaks burst overhead. We dropped into the grass, breathing hard. Shouting followed. Boots. And then came the worst sound of all. A German voice, sharp and full of venom. "Deserters! Freeze or die!" Franz grabbed my wrist, his voice hoarse with panic. We run now." I didn't think. I just followed. Bullets cracked past us, hot and hungry. One tore through my sleeve. Franz screamed behind me, but he was still running. The pasture opened before us, dew-covered and endless. Then, just ahead, we saw them. 3 American soldiers, rifles raised. But they didn't shoot. Franz stumbled, fell to his knees, and shouted in broken English, "Bitte! Please, no shoot! No shoot!" I joined him, raising my shaking hands high. I could hear the Germans behind us, cursing, closing in. One of the Americans fired a warning shot, then yelled something in English I couldn't understand. But I understood what came next. Silence. No more boots behind us. No more shouting. Just the quiet command of one of the Americans, "Get 'em up!" "They're done!" Franz was crying again. So was I. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was relief. The Americans didn't smile when they took us in, but they didn't hit us either, and that alone felt like mercy. One of them, a tall black soldier with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel, kept his rifle trained on us as we lay face down in the cold pasture. His boots stopped just inches from my head. I could hear my own breath, shaky and loud, mixing with Franz's shallow gasps beside me. After what felt like an hour, he barked something toward the others. A younger soldier, blond and not much older than us, approached and started patting us down. When he found nothing but crumpled letters and a pocket knife on Franz, he exhaled like he'd expected worse. "No SS tags," he muttered to the one standing watch. "They're Wehrmacht. That saved us." I could feel it. They let us sit up, hands still behind our heads, and offered water. Not food, just water. But that water was colder and sweeter than anything I'd ever tasted. Like it was washing the war out of our throats. "Names?" the younger one asked, slowly, pointing between us. "Otto," I managed to croak. "Und Franz." He scribbled something on a card, then whistled to a jeep nearby. Soon, we were loaded in the back with 3 more prisoners. One with a bandaged arm, another barely conscious from a leg wound. None of us spoke. We didn't have to. We all wore the same expression: shock, exhaustion, and a strange kind of gratitude. The camp wasn't far. Rows of tents lined a former orchard, surrounded by barbed wire. But even the wire looked different from what I expected. It wasn't cruel, it was just there. They herded us into a fenced area, handed us brown blankets, and pointed toward the tent flaps. Inside, a few Germans were already there, sitting against the canvas walls, some whispering, some just staring. Then I saw something that shook me. A man, his uniform stripped of all insignia, sat calmly in the corner, reading an English newspaper. He looked up, gave a slight nod, then returned to his page. Franz leaned over and whispered, "That's Captain Riedel. He commanded over 300 men just 2 weeks ago." "You're sure?" I asked. Franz nodded. "I saw him in Magdeburg. He shot a soldier for deserting. Now look at him." The realization hit me like a hammer. Everyone was falling. Rank meant nothing here. Power had evaporated like morning mist. We were all just men now, naked beneath our faded uniforms, exposed by the same fear. That night, I didn't sleep again. Not from fear this time, but from thought. One of the Americans, an officer, I think, walked through the camp as the moon climbed higher. He stopped to glance inside each tent. When he reached ours, he lingered. "None of you boys SS?" he asked, his German broken but clear. We all shook our heads quickly. "Too quickly." He gave a short nod. "Good. You get food tomorrow. But if I find out you lied, prison won't be your biggest problem." Then he turned and left, the crunch of gravel under his boots fading slowly. I looked around. Some of the prisoners had tears in their eyes. Not because of his threat, but because of that word. Food. For weeks, we had survived on moldy bread, spoiled potatoes, and water from bomb craters. The thought of real food, American food, felt surreal. But beneath the hunger, something darker simmered inside me. Guilt. We had laughed when Paris fell. We had cheered when Poland was crushed. We believed in the Iron Fist, the supremacy, the glory. And now we sat like beggars at the feet of the very people we were told to hate. I stared at Franz, who was now fast asleep on the cold ground, mouth slightly open, clutching his blanket like a child. He didn't look like a soldier. None of us did. We looked like what we truly were. Defeated boys, chasing forgiveness in the uniforms of monsters. Morning came with the smell of something we hadn't sensed in weeks. Coffee. Not the burnt tree bark soup we used to boil in rusty kettles back in the Wehrmacht camps, but actual coffee. Rich, bitter, foreign. It drifted across the camp like a ghost of a different world. For a moment, we all just sat up in our tents, sniffing like animals, disoriented by hope. The Americans brought food in metal trays. Eggs, bread, jam, real jam. I remember staring at the little red smear like it was a diamond. One of the prisoners started crying the moment he saw the butter. Just broke down right there in the dirt, spoon in hand. No one laughed. Franz devoured everything in minutes. I ate slower, unsure if this was a trick. Maybe they'd poison it. Maybe they'd feed us and then shoot us for sport. But nothing happened. No bullets, no shouts. Just silence, except for the quiet clinking of metal forks against trays. Later that day, we were lined up and separated. The officers took names, ranks, and assigned us numbers. They gave us new clothes, clean, neutral garments, like workers, not prisoners. They cut our hair. They photographed us like we were museum pieces. I could barely recognize myself in the black and white image they clipped to my file. Then came the interrogation tent. An American officer, flanked by 2 others, sat behind a wooden table. One of them, an interpreter, gestured for me to sit. The room was warm, too warm. It made my nerves worse. "You are Otto Kruger?" the officer asked. "Yes, sir," I replied, voice steady. "Unit?" "4th Army, Infantry Division. Transferred from the Eastern Front last year." He scribbled something. Didn't even look at me. "SS?" "No, never." He looked up. His eyes narrowed. "You sure about that?" "Yes, sir. I swear." He studied me for a second longer, then nodded. "Fine. You'll be processed and moved. No trouble. You get work detail. You'll stay until the war ends, maybe longer." "Work detail?" I asked, confused. "You'll help clean up, rebuild, farm, dig graves, whatever's needed." I should have felt insulted. A soldier reduced to a laborer. But I didn't. I felt relieved, grateful even. Anything was better than more killing. Then he leaned in slightly. "Tell me something, Otto. Why are so many of you running to us instead of your Russian allies?" I hesitated. The room got colder despite the heat. "Because we're afraid," I said honestly. "The stories of what they do." He nodded slowly. "I've heard them too." "But it's not just fear," I added. "It's how you treat us. I don't understand it. We were your enemy. We killed your men. And you feed us. You treat us like people." He didn't smile, didn't gloat, just stared. "We treat you like people, Otto, because we're not like what you served." That hit deeper than any bullet I'd ever dodged. I couldn't speak. I didn't know how to respond. He waved me out of the tent. As I stepped into the sunlight, Franz was waiting near the fence. He looked different, cleaner, brighter somehow. "What did they say?" he asked. "We're not going back," I replied quietly. He nodded. "Good." That night, we lay under a sky so full of stars it didn't feel real. The silence was different. It wasn't the silence of death or dread. It was peace. And peace, after all we'd seen and done, was terrifying. I remembered the Russian girl in Minsk, the one who stared at me like I was a monster when we marched through her village. The French boy who threw stones at our convoy. The Polish farmer whose barn we burned just because our sergeant said he looked suspicious. Those faces were burned into me. No amount of American kindness could erase them. I turned to Franz. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" He didn't answer for a long time. "Maybe," he said finally, "but we'll never forgive ourselves." And that, I knew, was the truth. 2 weeks passed in that American-run camp, and something strange began to happen. We stopped thinking like soldiers. Gone were the morning salutes, the stiff backs, the barking of ranks. We no longer sharpened knives or whispered about escape. We stopped dreaming of Berlin, or what remained of it. We stopped hoping for some last miracle that would pull Hitler from the ashes and raise the swastika again. We were ghosts of a broken machine, now surrounded by men who had no need to hate us, but plenty of reason to. And still, they didn't. Every day, a few of us were sent to nearby towns under supervision, to help repair roads or bury the dead. It was dirty work, painful work, but the Americans paid us in cigarettes, sometimes chocolate, sometimes bread. And more than the food, it was the looks that changed us. The civilians. Old German women spat at our boots. Little children wouldn't come near us. Once, a shopkeeper's wife threw rotten apples at our heads as we cleared rubble near her bakery. "Traitors!" she screamed. "Murderers!" We didn't fight back. We didn't speak, because she wasn't wrong. One day, during road duty, I found myself working beside an American soldier named Carter. He was from Ohio, whatever that meant, and had this lazy kind of grin that made it hard to hate him, even if I wanted to. "You always this quiet?" he asked as we shoveled gravel onto a muddy patch of road. "I have nothing to say," I replied. "You fought for Hitler," he said bluntly, "and now you're laying gravel for Uncle Sam. Pretty strange world, huh?" I tensed. "We followed orders," Carter laughed bitterly. "That's what every German says. Orders. Like your brain shut off the day the uniform went on." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Do you hate us?" He didn't answer right away, just kept shoveling. Finally, he said, "Hate? No, you're already beaten. What's the point?" I nodded slowly. "But I'll tell you what I do hate," he added. "I hate that you guys surrendered so fast. Like rats running to us, not even trying to fight the Russians. You were happy to burn the world, and now you want us to save you from the fire." He dropped his shovel and looked me dead in the eyes. "I saw what your people did in Dachau. I saw the piles, the ovens. I still smell it in my sleep. I felt cold, even under the sun. We didn't know." I started. He cut me off. "You chose not to know. That was worse than a bullet. Worse than prison. We worked in silence after that. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept seeing the mountain of bodies Carter had mentioned. I had heard rumors from captured Allied broadcasts, but we always dismissed them as propaganda. Lies to break morale. Lies to make us doubt the fatherland. But what if it wasn't lies? What if every sickening story was true, and we, in our silence, had allowed it? I stared at the stars again, like I had that first night, trying to feel small and clean. But now, even the stars seemed to judge me. Franz was coughing beside me. His lungs hadn't recovered from the winter in the Ardennes. He didn't speak much anymore, but when he did, it was always something that stuck. "You think they'll put us on trial?" he asked suddenly. "For what?" I whispered. "For being part of it. Even if we didn't know everything, doesn't that still make us part of it?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know what we deserved anymore. Not freedom. Not forgiveness. Maybe just this. This quiet, backbreaking work. This slow fade into history. Nameless and forgotten. Laying roads for a country that beat us without hating us. That was mercy. And mercy was more than we ever gave. The world kept moving, even though the war was still choking on its final breaths. Rumors swirled through the camp like smoke. Hitler's dead. Berlin's fallen. The Reich is finished. But no official word came. The Americans didn't speak much about it. When they did, it was short, clipped, like they were trying to process the news themselves. One morning, a new group of prisoners arrived. Dirty, skeletal men with hollow eyes, no uniforms, and numbers tattooed on their arms. They weren't soldiers. They were ghosts, survivors from Buchenwald, we later learned. They were kept in a different section, guarded more carefully than us. Franz saw one of them from a distance and muttered, "That can't be real." But it was. I overheard an American officer talking to a sergeant near the supply tent. "We liberated it last week. They burned bodies to cover it up, but we caught them too fast." The other man asked, "Did they find SS in there?" "Yeah," the officer said. "Some tried to blend in with the prisoners. Didn't work." One of the survivors recognized a guard, beat him to death with a rusted pipe before we could stop it. I felt my legs go weak. We had heard whispers, words like camps, cleansing, final solution. But the details, what was really being done in our name, had been hidden behind speeches and parades. Now we were seeing the aftermath. It wasn't a war. It had been a massacre, and we were part of it. Not long after, the Americans brought us a stack of newspapers, German ones. Photos on the front page, mountains of shoes, human bones, a bulldozer pushing corpses, and in the center of it all, our flag, the red and black swastika fluttering like a bloodstain against ash. Franz turned away and vomited. Another man began screaming and had to be restrained. "Me!" I sat there, holding the paper in my lap, staring at the horror, and for the first time since the war began, I wept like a child. Not for my country, not even for the dead. I wept because I had believed in it. Because I had worn that uniform, saluted that symbol, and sworn loyalty to a regime that built furnaces for children. No one said anything for a long time. Silence settled over the camp like a funeral shroud. Even the American guards moved slower that day. One of them, Carter, dropped off extra bread rations without saying a word. He didn't even look at us. That night, Franz asked me the question I had been dreading. If we had known, back then, would we have done anything? I didn't answer. I didn't deserve to answer. The next morning, An American major called a group of us together. We were to be transferred to a new site, one closer to a town where reconstruction had begun. They didn't call us prisoners. They called us detained labor. It sounded better than war criminals, though we knew we might still become that. Before we left, I saw Carter one last time. He approached me as I climbed onto the truck. "You'll be rebuilding a church that the Luftwaffe flattened," he said. "Locals don't want Germans near it, but orders are orders," I nodded. "Thank you for treating us like people." He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Don't mistake mercy for forgiveness." Then he turned and walked away. Those words stayed with me all the way to the next camp, and they followed me every day as I lifted stones, dug trenches, and rebuilt a house of God in a country I had helped destroy. Each brick I laid was a silent prayer, not for redemption, not for forgetfulness, just for a chance to be something more than what I had been. The town we were sent to was called Bad Hersfeld, a place that had once been beautiful, I was told, before the bombs turned its streets to twisted metal and scorched rubble. What remained was half a church, some stubborn stone walls, and a graveyard that had more fresh holes than headstones. The locals didn't want us there. That was clear from the start. As the truck rolled into town, I saw their faces. Old men glaring from behind broken windows, women clutching children to their sides like shields, and boys barely in their teens who looked at us with more hate than I'd ever seen in a Russian's eyes. "Filthy Nazis!" one of them spat as we passed. His voice didn't shake. I was 26. That boy couldn't have been more than 11. Franz looked at me and murmured, "We destroyed everything, and now we're here to fix it. Feels wrong, but it wasn't wrong. It was justice. Quiet and cruel. The kind that doesn't kill you, just makes you live long enough to regret staying alive." We were housed in what used to be a school gymnasium. No beds, just straw mats and a latrine that stank worse than a trench. A U.S. corporal with a southern accent oversaw us, smoked constantly, cursed like a devil, but never laid a hand on anyone. Said his name was Miller. "Your job," he said the first morning, pacing in front of us like a lion, "is to lift what needs lifting, dig what needs digging, and keep your goddamn mouths shut." No one argued. We were marched to the church ruins just after dawn. The locals watched us like hawks. A woman with a cane stood on the steps of a burned-out bakery and shouted, "You should be digging your own graves, not our church." No American corrected her. The church had taken a direct hit. The steeple was gone, shattered like a bone. Only one wall remained upright, blackened and cracked. The altar had been ripped open like a wound, and bits of stained glass glittered in the rubble like broken promises. They gave us picks and shovels, and we began. Every brick we moved felt like lifting the weight of 1,000 lies. Every stone reminded me of someone we had silenced, someone we had crushed under ideology and steel. On the third day, I uncovered something beneath the rubble. Half a crucifix, scorched black, the body of Christ still nailed to it. One arm broken off. I held it up. Miller saw me and waved me over. "Give it here." He took it carefully. His eyes lingered on it longer than I expected. Then he looked at me. "You ever believe in anything?" he asked. I blinked. "Once." He gave a hollow chuckle. "Yeah, me too." Then he turned and set the crucifix gently on a nearby table. Like it still meant something. Later that evening, something happened that shook me deeper than gunfire ever had. A group of local women came to the church ruins. They carried buckets, cloths, soap. They started cleaning the stone steps without a word. One of them, maybe in her 50s, glared at us as she scrubbed. Franz whispered, "Why are they helping?" Another prisoner said, "Because it was their church before it was a ruin." It hit me then. These people weren't rebuilding for us. They were reclaiming what was stolen. Not just their homes or their buildings, but their dignity, their right to believe in something again. And we, broken, hungry, stripped of power, were being forced to witness it. I watched one of the young girls, barely 15, kneel beside a grave marker near the churchyard. She was scrubbing moss from the stone, lips moving in silent prayer. I turned away. I couldn't look, because I had worn the uniform that killed her future. And now, I was helping rebuild what my country had torn down, one stone at a time, not as an act of redemption, but because it was the only thing left to do. The last week of our assignment in Bad Hersfeld arrived with news that changed everything. The war in Europe was over. Germany had officially surrendered, unconditionally. There would be no more speeches, no more secret weapons, no last stand in the Alps. Just silence. A silence so final it choked the breath out of every one of us. Miller, the American corporal, didn't make a big announcement. He simply walked into the church site with a newspaper folded under his arm, handed it to Franz, and said, "It's done." We gathered around that paper like it was fire in winter. There it was. Reich capitulates. Germany surrenders. Photos of Allied leaders shaking hands. Crowds in New York and London cheering in the streets. Smiling faces. Flags waving. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like being buried alive. That night, Franz sat on the cold floor of the gymnasium, staring at the newspaper again. "So this is it," he muttered. "No more Reich, no more Führer. Just shame." I didn't reply. What was there to say? We hadn't just lost a war. We had lost our place in the world, our identity, our cause. All that remained was a bitter, rotting husk of pride, and the memory of what we'd allowed to happen under our flag. The next morning, something strange occurred. As we walked to the work site, escorted as always by Miller and 2 other American guards, we noticed something new. People weren't spitting at us anymore. They weren't smiling either, but they weren't full of rage. They looked tired, like the hate had burned itself out. One old man, sweeping ash from the front of a bombed bookstore, even nodded at me. A nod. I didn't know what to do with that. At the church, we continued working. The wall had been rebuilt. The broken crucifix was set into a new frame above what would be the altar again, and fresh stones had been delivered to pave the front steps. As I laid the final stone that afternoon, something in my chest shifted. Not peace, not pride, but maybe purpose. For the first time in years, I was building something instead of destroying it. Then a voice called out from across the courtyard. "Kruger! Franz!" We turned to see an American officer approaching with a clipboard. "You're being transferred." "Transferred where?" I asked. "To a civilian labor site, further south. You're low risk now. You'll stay there until further notice. Might even get paid." Franz looked at me. "Are we free?" The officer shrugged. "Define free." That night, as we packed what little we had, Miller came by. He tossed Franz a cigarette and said, "Don't come back." Franz gave a tired laugh. "I don't think we could, even if we wanted to." Miller turned to leave, but paused. "You know, not all of us wanted to hate you." I raised an eyebrow. "But you did anyway." He nodded. "Yeah, I did. You earned it." He walked away without looking back. Our last morning in Bad Hersfeld, before the trucks arrived, I went to the church one final time. The locals hadn't arrived yet. The place was quiet. The crucifix stood in the new frame, sunlight cutting through its chipped edges like forgiveness, trying to sneak in. I stood there for a long time, not praying, not begging, just remembering all of it. Franz came up behind me, clutching his sack of belongings. "Ready?" I nodded. As we left the church behind, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. I didn't want to go back to the old world. The one with flags and lies and songs of glory sung over the graves of children. No, I wanted to live in this broken, shameful, uncertain world. Because it was honest. Because in this world, even a man like me could face what he had done. And maybe, just maybe, become something more.